I've been getting this question a little bit lately, talking about Work Hard, Don't Suck. New book coming out in April 2023. And the question is, where did this come from? Where did this project come from? So I wanted to tell the story a little bit. Now I know that I'm going to have to make some social media posts about this in the future, but I figured it'd be easier just to do it in video form, tell the story, because I like telling stories. So there I was. It goes all the way back to Father's Day a couple of years ago, really. It's kind of where it had its genesis. And Father's Day, I think it was 2021, was the first Father's Day ever that my kids didn't call, text, or say Happy Father's Day. Now, normally I don't get wrapped around the axle about stuff like this because, in the military, you miss so many of these quote unquote important days, birthdays, Christmases, whatever. But for whatever reason, this one stung just a little bit and I couldn't figure out why. So I had just finished reading the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, and kind of sat in my room for a little while and just did some introspection to try to figure out what the heck went wrong. And I ended up taking ownership of it. And what I'd realized was that I had kind of let the family start to diverge just a little bit. So my kids had gotten older. My youngest was 16 at the time and got his driver's license. So he was going and doing his own thing, kind of take himself wherever he needed to go. My oldest was a senior in high school, or maybe he had already graduated, I think. Yeah, he had already graduated about a year. And he was working and doing his own thing. And then my oldest lives in Alabama. So I'd kind of let the family diverge just a little bit. We didn't do date nights anymore. We didn't do the family dinner nights anymore where we just sit down and even if it's just for 30 minutes, once or twice a week, sit down and have conversation and talk and just laugh and have fun, and do family things. When the kids are little, I think it's really easy because they're always in there. They're kind of just in your bubble a lot more than when they get older. They tend to kind of be a little bit more reclusive as they become teenagers. Well, so I sat down and had a family meeting. I explained it all, and my wife and I decided, okay, we're going to throw down and with more family time and more mandatory fun for the family, and it worked. It kind of got the family back on the right path. And all right, so fast forward, spring of 2022, it's about January, February. So youngest boy had come in from football one night. Katie and I are sitting in the living room watching TV. Boy walks in, Beats headphones on, hat turned backwards, no shirt, backpack slung over his back, doesn't say a word, goes straight to his room, shuts the door. And I kind of leaned up in my chair and I said, hey, I think we're done raising our kids. Like we've taught them what we need to teach them thus far. We've taught them right from wrong. We've taught them to be men of character. We've taught them how to choose the correct things and how to take care of people and how to love unconditionally and all these things. Right now, you'll never be done being a parent. I think that job just never ends. There's always polishing to do for sure. And there'll always be questions and always be guidance and we'll always be coaches and mentors to our kids. But as far as teaching them the foundations, I think we've done that. So I came up with this idea after a little bit. I decided I was going to write down all the dumb dad advice that I'd been giving them for all these years, 26 years. My oldest boy's 26. So I started capturing it all just in bullet format. And I was going to write one 8.5 by 11 page, single space, about 1,000 words or so on each topic. And for example, in our house, since our boys were very, very little, saying in our house has been just be a good dude. Well, what does that mean? And I was going to kind of expand that a little bit and kind of give what we think it means to be a good dude. So I started making a list, just brainstorming over a couple of months. I ended up with 160 of these things that I could come up with. So I decided to break it up. I just sat down and I started writing 1 or 2 a day. And sometimes I'd write 3 if the mood struck me, whatever. And after a few months, I had over 100 of these written out. And as I started kind of putting it together, I was like, man, this is just way too much for a book. This book would be 2 inches thick. And I know that my kids aren't going to read a 2-inch thick book. But if I can get it pared down to about 45 to 50,000 words, which is about a 200 pager in the format that I've been doing, I think I could probably convince them to at least stick it in the toilet magazine rack and read it one at a time, kind of like Uncle John's old bathroom reader, if you remember that thing. All right. So simultaneously, while all this is going on, I had reached out to a local buddy who had written a book. I brought it home, found it in the break room one day at work. I brought it home, I read it real quick, and I took it back, and I called him, and he ended up putting me in touch with his publisher, Mike Capuzzi. Shout out to Mike Capuzzi, Bite Size Books up in Philly. He's a champion. Contact him if you ever thought about writing a book. So I reached out to Mike, never met this man before in my life. We ended up striking up a friendship, and after a few brainstorming sessions and talking about this, I kept trying to fit my project into his mold, and it just wasn't working. He has a very specific niche that he likes to work in. You can go to his website and check it out, bitesizebooks.com. But my project wasn't going to work for the way that he wanted to do it. So I started kind of looking elsewhere, and Mike says, hey man, I'll tell you what, I'll just help kind of coach you through this self-publishing journey. Well, simultaneously, my wife had gone to high school with this gentleman that has self-published 6 or 7 books now. He's working on a few. And so I got in touch with him. First time I ever talked to this man, we talked for 3 hours and 18 minutes. Shout out to Joel Hughes. Joel is starting up not Bite Size Books, disregard, that's Mike Capuzzi. Joel is starting up Springboard Books, and he's up in Oregon. Anyways, Joel and I strike up a friendship. We start talking, and Joel and I kind of went through this self-publishing journey of No New Lessons. No New Lessons was the first book I put out back in December of 2022. Story of me going hiking up in Alaska. Lots of really good lessons learned, good life lessons that come out of there, decision-making, planning, execution, the battle of wills, all that stuff is in there. It's a pretty epic tale. If you haven't picked up your copy yet, go to Amazon, look it up, No New Lessons. It pops right up. You can also follow my author page on there for more stuff coming up. Anyways, so I'm still working on Work Hard, Don't Suck while all this is going on. And the whole goal with Work Hard, Don't Suck was always, I wanted to have it printed out just from Office Depot or whatever, spiral bound, cost me about $12 a copy or something. And I was going to give it to the kids for Christmas. And I met that goal. And it was really cool because when I had it all printed out, I had the dedication page and it just says dedicated to the white boys, right? And it was a blank 8.5 by 11 page. So in each of the boys' copies, I went through and hand wrote a note specific to them and what this book means to them and how they can use it in their life moving forward. Because I really believe this. I really believe that kids, when they get up towards high school graduation, think about this from the kids' perspective and remember back, if you can remember back to when you graduated high school is your why for a lot of things. High school and high school sports and all your high school clubs, they're the reason that you get up in the mornings. They're the reason you get your hair cut. They're the reason you take care of yourself, self-care, grooming, that kind of stuff. They're the reason you keep your nails short. They're the reason that you show up on time. And then all of a sudden after graduation day, that's all gone. And these kids kind of sit around and they have this like, well, now what kind of mentality. And I really believe that there's very, very few of these kids. Like I believe it's unrealistic expectations to put on a child, a 17-year-old child, to make a decision what you don't want to do with the rest of your life right after high school, when you've basically been told what to do all the way up until you're 17, until your high school graduation, you're 17, 18 years old. And now we're expecting you to go to college and decide on a career that you're going to do for the rest of your life. I just think that that's horribly unrealistic. Well, Work Hard, Don't Suck was meant to kind of fill in that gap where those kids graduate high school and enter young adulthood and get out on their own. Like, we talk about being empty nesters and with the analogy of kicking these kids out of the nest now that they're fully grown and capable of being out on their own. But really, I don't know that they are, especially in today's world where they're just not being taught the same things that we were, even in my generation. And older generations got taught stuff that we didn't get taught, right? So Work Hard, Don't Suck came from that. And I picked 60 of those 160 items that I had listed. And that's what Work Hard, Don't Suck is all about. And I've got it broken down into different topics, from character to mentality to hard work and discipline to finances and leadership and communication. And then there's just some random cats and dogs in there, just kind of random thoughts as I'm sitting on the back porch, just watching the ripples on the water kind of stuff. But the idea is to give it to a younger generation, whether it's a young teenager, a teenager that maybe just graduated high school. have this as kind of the checklist for them to look back on and focus on some traits and some skills that they can take into their adult life that'll make them a more rounded individual. The very first chapter in the book is titled, Who Should Read This Book? Obviously, my kids, because that's who I wrote it from. That's the tone of voice of the whole book, is me talking to my kids and giving them advice. And I tell a lot of anecdotal stories in there, and really go into some of our family history and our family laughs and adventures. And I tie those into lessons and good advice for the boys. But what about a young teenager who maybe doesn't have a father figure in the house, who doesn't have anybody to teach them things like chivalry and masculinity and, those kinds of things? And single moms, I know you're doing a great job out there, but some of that stuff just can't be replaced. You can't read it in a book and expect to teach it to your young son. Whereas maybe if I can communicate it to him male to male, or from a male voice to a male recipient, then maybe that'll land just a little bit better. I saw it when I was coaching football, when I would have these kids come out on the field who maybe didn't have a father figure in the house, dad was gone or otherwise not available. And for a few hours a week, I was kind of that influence on those boys, and they really gravitated to that. Good job, single moms. You guys are doing great, but men need to be around men, just like women need to be around women. All right. How about a young family who just got out of college and are starting their careers, starting their family, and they decide to have their first child? All right. Well, I don't know about you guys, but when my kids were born, all three of them, and even my bonus son, when we got any of them, nobody gave me a checklist that said, here, teach them this stuff in the next 18 years, and they'll turn out to be good dudes. So I had to kind of, just like every parent, we just kind of went with it, and we thought what we were doing was the best that we could do, and we tried to do the best that we could do at all times. But you really don't know until the kids are up and out into the real world and doing things on their own. And believe me, I get to notice too, like when I hang out with my boys out in public, or I watch them interact with their friends, or watch the different communications they have on maybe the social medias, or something like that. I can see the things that we tried to teach them over the years, they're in there. They might not just pop right out at you, but you can tell when my son walks up and shakes a person's hand, looks them in the eyes with a firm handshake and says, hello, sir, nice to meet you, or says, thank you, ma'am, I appreciate it, or may I please have another. Those little things, holds the door for the little old lady at the supermarket. It's those little things that you kind of start to notice after a little bit, and you go, aha, see, some of that stuff stuck. Anyways, that's where Work Hard Don't Suck came from. And the target audience really, it really could be anyone. I was having a conversation today with a guy. He's a doctor. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion, played with Joe Montana back in the day. The guy's a legend, right? And I'm having a conversation with him today, and he has a young son, 14 years old, and he wants to give a copy of this book to his son. Now, I'm not saying that to brag or anything like that, but I'm just saying that the level of impact that this stuff has, I think it's needed, it's warranted. People crave this kind of stuff. And as parents, anybody who has kids can attest to, you can sit there and tell them this, that, and the other until you're blue in the face. And oftentimes it just doesn't resonate. And then somebody else, a complete stranger, maybe it's a coach or a counselor at school, or a leader, a teacher, somebody at church, can come over and they can tell them the same exact things that you've been telling them. And then all of a sudden it's like, bing, the light bulb goes on and it resonates with them. And I don't know if it's just from parents, they get this want kind of tune out kind of voice or message in their heads. But having it said by someone else in a manner that they can understand, told via the method of storytelling, I think that just, hopefully it's going to resonate. I'm really hopeful for this. The title is Work Hard, Don't Suck, a moral compass for raising young adults with honor, character, and discipline. I hope that it lands. I hope it makes a splash. I hope that you guys enjoy it. I know I've enjoyed the project. And like I said, these are only 60 of about 100 plus that I already have written. So you can expect a volume 2 coming out hopefully in 2024. And if it's all the same, I might start interviewing other parents and getting other ideas, and just end up making a compilation series out of this stuff. Because not only is it fun, not only is it good evidence of these practices in action, it's also part of our family history that we're getting that we're passing down. Specifically, when I'm talking to my boys and I'm telling some of these stories, I'm bringing in a lot of memories. I'm bringing in a lot of evidence from my parents, my wife's parents, just the family history getting tied in, and how a lot of these applications that we talk about, you can take it into your everyday lives, from financial discipline to getting up when the alarm clock goes off and making your bed, to saying yes ma'am and no ma'am, and how chivalry's not dead. All those little things that sometimes we just kind of breeze right past and we don't really spend a whole lot of time and effort on. I wrote a book on it. So when nobody gave me a checklist when my kids were born that said teach them this stuff in the next 18 years, I wrote the checklist. I hope you guys enjoy it. I'll let you guys know as soon as it comes out. Work Hard, Don't Suck. Expect it in April 2023. It's going to be a good one. See you guys next time.